Hey, what's up everyone? GameDad here, and we are back with another PlayStation compilation video. This time we are taking a look at all 7 videos that were in my PS2 collection series. But first, if you are new to the channel or you just haven't yet, please be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below, as well as that little notification bell so you get an alert every time I got a new video coming out. Now, sit back and enjoy as we go through all 7 videos that I had in my PS2 collection series. Alright, so up first we have ATV Offroad Fury, released by Rainbow Studios in 2001, and this is a really fun kind of game. It gives you that quote-unquote open world kind of feeling, but with ATVs or quads. You get to go around, you can find things that would allow you to do jumps and tricks and stuff like that. I mean, the like trick base that they give you, or the library of tricks, it isn't that extensive, but it was still pretty fun to go through and jam out on a quad. I really enjoyed playing this game, actually. Now here we have ATV Offroad Fury 2, also released by Rainbow Studios, but in 2002. This one, I feel like the graphics, they became a lot sharper, so that was nice, and they definitely increased the library of tricks. Now, I will say in this game, though, I feel like the controls got a lot more stiff. I mean, they added the ability to do various things, and everything was a little more sensitive as far as like trick combinations, but like turning and just basic ATV controls felt a lot more stiff to me. Now here we have Backyard Sports Basketball 2007, released by Game Brains in 2007, and I really like the Backyard Sports games because they don't make it so serious. It keeps it really light. It keeps it fun. As you can see, it's more like cartoony, comical style graphics. And they just made these games feel a little more over the top instead of being, strictly, oh, this is an NBA game or like this is a football game. It made it more fun and more enjoyable to play for somebody like me who doesn't really care about sports games. Now here's one of my favorite PS2 games, that is Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, released by Snowblind Studios in 2001. And the graphics in this game were excellent for the time, and I think they hold up fairly well today. I mean, it's everything is very polygonal still, but this game, it was so revolutionary because it was basically you took Dungeons and Dragons and made it into a video game. It was awesome. It has all the RPG elements that you could want. It has all the different townsfolk that you can talk to, and you just go on this grand adventure, and this game is just a ton of fun. Now here is Blood Rain 2, released by Terminal Reality in 2004, and I was never a huge fan of the Blood Rain games, but I mean, they were definitely popular. It even spawned a movie. I don't remember if it got a sequel, but I do remember when the first Blood Rain movie came out, and I mean, the whole kind of premise behind it kind of feels like Blade, but more in like older, like Nazi Germany kind of times. That's just the vibe that I get from it. And I mean, you just go around, you're a vampire, and you're just taking out vengeance on your enemies. Very hack and slash, but I mean, it's an alright game. Now here is Burnout Revenge, released by Criterion Games in 2005, and this is like a racer run into everything kind of game. I mean, as you can see, it says slam traffic to score. So, I mean, this game is kind of over the top speed. You can see they kind of add that blur effect to the screen, and you just got to go through in this particular mode and just smash everything in your way. And I mean, it's fun. The controls weren't too stiff, but they also weren't so loose that you're flying all over the screen. But overall, it was a really fun game to jam out on. Now here is Cake Mania Baker's Challenge, released by Sandlot Games in 2006. Now games like this, a lot of the time were either just PC-based games, or they had them on things like, I think it was original, they had original iOS games for it, but then it was also something that was on consoles like the Nintendo DS, because you could use touch controls for it. As you can see, the graphics are beyond basic, especially for PS2 era. You think maybe they could have added like some 3D to it, but overall, I mean, it's super simple. These type of games got really popular for a while, and yeah, I mean, it's all right. Now here is Call of Duty 2 Big Red One, released by Activision in 2005, and unfortunately my game was just a little bit too scratched to get it to play consistently when I was capturing footage, but I mean, this is actually one of my more favorite Call of Duty games. I mean, yeah, it's old compared to different games of this type of genre now, but this was one of those groundbreaking military style games, and it was a ton of fun. But I got to get that disc resurfaced, that way I can actually play it again. Here we have the Capcom Classics Collection, released by Capcom in 2005. And this is just a collection of various popular games that Capcom has released over the years. Just like every other kind of compilation or collection that comes out from time to time. They had some fun games on here. I went ahead and popped into a couple of the different ones, but there wasn't really anything earth-shattering about the games that were in here. I would have expected there would be a lot more, Street Fighter games, things like that, but there really wasn't. I like their more modern collections instead because you actually get a lot more out of it. Next up is Capcom versus SNK 2, released by Capcom in 2001, and this is where you get a classic clash of the titans with different games. So you get your SNK fighters, you get your Street Fighter, you get all of the different characters from either game, and it gives you that cool, I wouldn't say comic book art style, but definitely more of that hand-drawn cartoon feel to it. Still throwing in that little bit of PS2 3D background in there, but super fun game. I really enjoyed playing this. All right, now here we have Cars, released by Rainbow Studios in 2006. And with this game, the overall controls, they're pretty good. Sometimes they can get a little sticky on the turning, but overall, they really weren't bad. And the graphics, I feel like they really match the overall style of the actual movie Cars. So that was kind of nice to see that translation go directly from the screen to a game. And it was, just a classic racing game and just in the theme of cars. You got all the different characters, Lightning McQueen and all them, and yeah, it was just fun to play. Now here we have Cars Mater National Championship, released by Rainbow Studios in 2007, and this one I found to be actually a lot more fun than the regular Cars game. The controls were a little bit, they were not tighter in the sense that it was stiff controls, but tighter in the sense that they were a lot easier to use. Now the graphics, I don't see any kind of an upgrade whatsoever compared to the base Cars game, but I did like the change in environments. The other one felt a lot more, indie track kind of based, and this one really felt like it actually hit home with the movie itself a lot more. Now here we have Castlevania Lament of Innocence, released by Konami in 2003, and the very first thing that I noticed about this game is that it is just dark. I tried finding some brightness settings, things like that, and man, the game is just so hard to see anything. I don't know if it's because I was capturing it through the Elgato and if that changed it in any way, but I found this game just really hard to see anything, which made it not that fun to play, honestly. I'm not sure if this game has, a really good story to it. I haven't actually played through the entire thing, but I really wasn't impressed with this little bit that I played. Now here is Commandos 2 Men of Courage, released by Pyro Studios in 2002, and this game had kind of kind of like an RTS, XCOM kind of feel to it. It isn't really grid-based or anything like XCOM, but it definitely had that feel. You pick your character, or one of your characters on screen, send them to go do a task, and then you just move forward from there. The controls, though, I found the controls to be very difficult to get a handle on. And as you can see, I clearly have no idea what I'm doing in this gameplay footage. Here is Conflict Desert Storm, released by Pivotal Games in 2002, and this was from that era whenever everyone was releasing some sort of military game. You had the SOCOM games, you had the Call of Duty games, you have the Medal of Honor games, and then here's this one. And the graphics, they're okay. They don't really hold up now, but for the time, they weren't that bad. The controls were pretty smooth. But yeah, overall, it's just another military style game. Nothing crazy. Up next, we have Contra Shattered Soldier, released by Konami in 2002. Now, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Contra franchise. I really like the original Contra on NES. I like Alien Wars on the SNES. But this one, they went 3D or whatever with it because, PS2 graphics. But overall, I was not impressed with this. The controls were just not intuitive at all, and in a Contra game, that's what you expect. You expect to just be able to run, jump, and shoot. And this one, they tried to get fancy with a couple other things, and I don't think it works very well. Now here we have Corvette, released by Global Star Software in 2004, and this game is for anyone that just loves Corvettes. They have every version of a Corvette that you could think of, and you just go through and just rock out in a nice driving game. Now, I will say the graphics, they're pretty decent in this, but the controls, oh man, the controls are just not pleasant to deal with. It's at times it's too tight and you're not turning hard enough, and other times it's like you just hit an ice slick and your car just veers straight off the road. So there really wasn't any consistency to the control scheme. Now, the last game in this video is Crash Nitro Kart, released by Vicarious Visions in 2003. And this one is fun, but honestly, I think I like CTR, Crash Team Racing, better. I mean, this is essentially the same kind of game, just with a graphics update. I mean, they changed a few mechanics around, and I mean, the game is fun, but yeah, I think I would definitely say I prefer CTR over this one. That one was definitely like a Mario Kart kind of contender. Crazy Taxi was released by Acclaim in 2001 and is definitely that kind of game that really lives up to its namesake. I mean, it kind of has a Simpsons hit and run sort of feel to it, where you just go out, you're doing crazy different tasks in your taxi. It doesn't matter who you hit, what you run into. You're just out to have an awesome time and just get your goal done. I mean, that's really all this game is about. So here we have DDR Extreme, released by Konami in 2003, and this is the first of several DDR games that are actually in my collection. And I mean, it's just like any DDR game you would expect. It's, you know, you hit the different arrows in different patterns, going along with all kinds of, you know, super hype techno dance remix kind of music. That's really all it is. You know, it's what really started rhythm games off before things like Guitar Hero and everything like that. Now, up next, we got DDR Extreme 2, released by Konami in 2005. And this one, just like DDR Extreme, it has all the same kind of stuff, except it's got some updated music to it. I didn't really notice any kind of major differences in the interface or the way it controls, but, you know, it's a DDR game. They're fun for parties and stuff like that. I never really cared for them on solo, though. Now, here we have DDRMax, Dance Dance Revolution. I don't know why it's kind of twice in there, but this was released by Konami in 2002. And as you can see, the backgrounds are a little bit different. They don't really have, you know, the crazy dancer going in the background or anything like that. They got some animations and stuff, but that's about it. You know, nothing crazy to this game. It's just yet another DDR game. Now here is DDRMax 2 Dance Dance Revolution by Konami in 2003. And with this, again, I mean, I don't know why they release so many of these games. They are basically the same thing over and over and over again, just with different track selections, I guess. It reminds me a lot of the sports games, but, you know, at least those get a graphics update every year. Now here is DDRX by Konami in 2008. And this one actually did offer new modes, and it offered more of an actual graphic update. I mean, the way all of the little dancing and directional arrows and stuff looks the same, but the menu kind of got a little bit of an overhaul. It goes a little bit smoother, but it's same style music that's in every other DDR game, just high beat, high tempo, and, you know, just have some fun with some friends. Now here we have DDR Supernova 2, released by Konami, also in 2008, and this is thankfully the last DDR game in my PS2 collection. As you can see, the interface is slightly different again, but something I didn't mention with all the other games is I actually have a couple of really high-end DDR pads. They're not, you know, arcade status or anything like that, but they're actually made of a hard plastic shell, and they have like plexiglass and metal and all kinds of stuff with them, and it actually makes the game feel a lot more authentic, like you were in an arcade, instead of those cheap pads that came with these sometimes. Up next, we got Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2, released by Acclaim in 2001, and I gotta say, this one, number 2 versus number 1, is such a massive difference. And also compared to like Matt Hoffman's BMX, I mean, this game, the graphics are insanely better. The parks are way better. And they actually have like real world locations, like I believe it's called Woodward, someplace in like Pennsylvania or something like that, some massive BMX park that's out there. And you just get to go out and rock out some tricks, Tony Hawk style. Now here is the Da Vinci Code released by 2K Games in 2006, and I gotta say this, like what I played of it, this is not a very fun game. It's not very interesting. I mean, it's basically like you're kind of doing the movie, sort of, like with the investigative stuff, but other than that, it didn't really feel like it followed the movie too much. I mean, the movie was halfway decent. I liked the second one better, Angels and Demons, but I mean, yeah, Da Vinci Code in a game, I guess, right? All right, here we go. Destroy All Humans, released by THQ in 2005. This was definitely an interesting concept to a game. I mean, normally you're always fighting off the aliens, but in this, you are the alien, and you have to go out and destroy everyone and everything using, advanced technology, using like telekinesis powers, and it's fun. In the little tutorial right here that I'm playing through, it's teaching you how to like pick up and throw cows and stuff like that. So definitely like a comical concept to the game. It was pretty fun. Now here is Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening, released by Capcom in 2005, and this is just a continuation of a really good series. I mean, it's very, hack and slash, that kind of stuff. It kind of reminds me of like its own take on a God of War game. You just beat the heck out of everything around you. You're collecting little orbs for health and power and stuff like that, and you're just moving right along through the game. But it is fun though. Here we have Dragon Ball Z Budokai, released by Bandai in 2002, and this is your typical DBZ fighting kind of game. I mean, it's no Dragon Ball Fighters, but this game is still a lot of fun. I really like how these games always have that like ultra cartoon cell shaded kind of color palette going for them. It really makes the games pop and makes them stand out among other fighter games. They're not cartoony, they're not hyper realistic. They just really like found their own way to animate all these kinds of games. Now here is Dragon Ball Z Sagas, released by Atari in 2005, and what I really like about this game is its overall like open world feel to it. It reminds me of the Dragon Ball games on Game Boy Advanced, except obviously, this isn't like a top-down or 2D kind of view. This is actually a 3D open world. And I mean, even though it is guided, it's linear, it's not a true open world, it still gives you that freedom to move around in a 3D space. As you can see, destructive environments. You get to throw all of your chi blasts everywhere, and it's just an all-around good time. Now here is Ed, Edd and Eddy, the Misadventures, released by Midway Games in 2005, and I love this animation style. I don't know what it is, like the Family Guy game had this kind of animation style. I think, I'm not going to compare this to Borderlands, but it has that cell shade where everything's got a black border around it. I've just always really enjoyed this kind of animation style. And I mean, it's classic Ed, Edd and Eddy. I mean, who doesn't love that? Old school Cartoon Network was awesome. So it was fun to be able to play this game and, go around as Ed, Double D, and, Ed. But great game. Now here we have iToy Play, released by Sony in 2003, and this was their first attempt at actually being able to have like people interact with a camera and their console, and it was really cool. I mean, think of like Xbox 360 with the Kinect. This was the same kind of thing, but I believe this came out long before the Kinect ever did. I'm pretty sure this was in the same era as the original Xbox, and as we know, they didn't have anything like that for it. But it's really cool to get out and like actually interact with things that are on the screen using your actual hand movements. Now here we have iToy Play 2, released by Sony in 2005, and with this one I didn't capture any gameplay footage because I could not find my PS2 camera anywhere. So I'm going to have to look through all of my different controller drawers and see if I can find out where it is. But this is the same kind of thing. It gets, the upgrade that you would expect. It works a little better. It's got some new games, things like that. But yeah, just another fun way to interact with your PS2. Here we have Final Fantasy X, released by Square in 2001, and man, this game, I love this game. This game is a masterpiece. This was the first one where they introduced a whole new way of doing the upgrade system, and then of course, you got Blitzball and all of that, but just the way everything was animated, the story of this game, it's just everything about this was amazing. I remember the first time I ever played it, my cousin Ryan, he had actually come up for the holidays when we were younger, and he had just gotten this game, and oh man, we played that game for hours and hours that holiday season. Now here is Final Fantasy X2, released by Square Enix in 2003, and this one, I didn't really play this one much myself, but from what I've been reading and what I've been told is it's kind of telling, kind of the other side, but sort of a continuation of the story, and you don't play as the other characters from before. Now you're playing as more of the support characters that were in Final Fantasy X, so that's pretty cool. Now, the last one for this video is Final Fantasy XI, released by Square Enix in 2004. And what was pretty groundbreaking about this game is that this was an online game. And you would go and connect to the various servers. A buddy of mine, Mnemonic Tutor, on YouTube and Twitch and all that, he is really heavy into this game, and he actually still plays it online. And what was cool is I actually have the special bundle pack that came with the bigger hard drive that you needed to actually run this game. So this was yet another groundbreaking Final Fantasy game. Fire Pro Wrestling Returns was released by AgeTech Incorporated in 2007, and it takes that classic Fire Pro Wrestling formula and just brings it to PS2. I mean, it's got those like 3D style looking 2D sprites. You get all of your different classic wrestling moves, you get tons of different fighters, and a crazy amount of customization that you can do in this game. It's ridiculous what you can do with your characters and the overall matches themselves. Super fun game to play. Grand Theft Auto 3 was released by Rockstar Games in 2001, and in my opinion, this was like the first real Grand Theft Auto game that is like how they are today. I mean, the 3D graphics were excellent for the time, and they hold up pretty well today. They're not as good as, Grand Theft Auto 5 or anything like that, but the graphics are still really good. You got your car chases, you got all the different weaponry, you have your different missions going on, and I mean, it's a really fun game as well. Grand Theft Auto Vice City was released by Rockstar Games in 2002, and this one took a lot of what worked about Grand Theft Auto 3 and just made it so much better. I mean, the radio is great in the car, the gameplay is great, the story is awesome, and you just really get to explore the game in a much more open kind of way. I mean, I really enjoy playing Vice City. This is probably one of my favorite Grand Theft Auto games. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was released by Rockstar Games in 2004, and of the original kind of Grand Theft Auto games, this one is probably my favorite. I mean, the gameplay is super, super smooth, and the story was great. It was awesome to just roam around the city. I mean, as you can see, I'm just riding around on the bike right here, and it was just a fun new concept that they added to the game. And overall, I mean, everything just plays so well in this game. It was so well thought out, and it doesn't get glitchy or anything like that like some of the other games can do at times, and it's just super fun to play. Gran Turismo 3 Aspec was released by Sony in 2001, and this one takes a lot of the same Gran Turismo aspects that you had before. You get the nice cars, the nice graphics, things like that, and you just have a nice, fun car racing game. I mean, there isn't really anything crazy innovative about it, but I will say, as far as racing games go, the Gran Turismo games always did have very excellent graphics. I mean, by today's standards of car games, like Forza, they don't really hold up, but these were the epitome of excellent racing games back in the day. The HD Loader was released by HD Loader in the early 2000s. I couldn't find a lot of original info about this, but what this actually did was allowed you to basically rip your PS2 games onto the hard drive, or like the hard drive upgrade that you could get for the PS2, and it would allow you to bypass copyright protection and actually play games without a disc. So Sony very quickly tried to shut them down, and they ended up coming out with something, I think it's called the HD Advance, and that allowed you to do the same kind of thing. But yeah, this was a way to kind of pirate games. Hitman 2 Silent Assassin was released by Eidos Interactive in 2002, and with this game, it felt like they fixed a lot of like the graphical issues where everything looked really polygonal. They really smoothed everything out a lot in this one, and it just feels like the gameplay itself is just better. I mean, it flows a lot nicer. It still has that stealthy aspect to it, but it doesn't feel, clunky or like unfair AI kind of stuff like I felt with the original Hitman game. Hitman Contracts was released by Eidos Interactive in 2004, and with this one, it feels like they didn't go as smooth with the graphics, but it feels like they increased the pace of the overall gameplay, which I think is a really good trade-off. I mean, the graphics are not terrible by any means compared to the other Hitman games, but it felt like you didn't have to move around so slow in this game anymore. You could actually get where you needed to go and just get it done. And I really appreciated that about this game. It made the game much more enjoyable for me. Hot Shots Golf 3 was released by SCEI in 2002, and to me, this one takes a more like comical approach to a golf game. I mean, unless you are really, really into golf, then golf games probably aren't the most fun thing on the planet for you to play. But this one, it's nice because it gives you, a more cheerful kind of interface. It tries to make it more fun and gives you, I guess I could say, more of like a mini golf feel to a regular golf game, which makes it, like I said, more enjoyable. And Television Lives was released by Crave Entertainment in 2003. And what's cool about this compilation compared to other compilation kind of games is the menu structure that they give you. Instead of just, a menu showing off some games, you're actually navigating through like not necessarily an old diner, but like an old pizzeria kind of thing. And they have arcade machines, whether they're freestanding or, like bar top, tabletop kind of things. You just get to go around and look at a bunch of different games that are in all of these machines and then actually play them. So it's a pretty cool concept the way they put this together. Jack 2 was released by SCEI in 2003, and this one takes everything that was awesome about Jack and Daxter and just takes it to the next level. I mean, the gameplay is super smooth, the graphics are excellent. I mean, as you can see in this gameplay footage, this particular area of the game is a little dark for my taste. I like games to be a lot brighter so I can actually see everything, but overall, this is just another fun game in the Jack and Daxter series. I mean, there's a reason why these games were so popular. Jeopardy! Released by Atari in 2003. Now, the PlayStation 1 version of this was just absolute complete crap. I mean, the graphics were awful, and the gameplay was awful. It just was not good. And the graphics, oh god, they were so bad and just so grainy. But in this one, this version on the PS2, as you can see, everything is much more clear. You can actually read things, and it was much easier to navigate around. And then they actually used like FMV of Alex Trebek, so I thought that was pretty cool. Give it a little more realism. Juiced 2 was released by THQ in 2007, and this reminds me kind of like a Midnight Club style game where, you're out, you're racing, you're betting, whether it's money or pink slips, and then you get vehicle upgrades, but it definitely had that Midnight Club feel, as you can see, just with the overall graphic scheme and everything like that. Now, the controls in this weren't that great. As you can see, kind of like swerving, and they were very sensitive. I didn't dive too far into the options to see if there's a way to adjust the sensitivity on it. But, I mean, overall, it was pretty fun playing this game. Kengo, Master of Bushido, was released by Ubisoft in 2001. And I gotta say, with this game, it feels like they went for ultra realism for Bushido. I mean, it's ancient art of sword fighting. And man, this first match that they throw you into, if you don't know what you're doing, you just get your rear handed to you. I mean, as you can see, this guy is just wailing on me. I couldn't even do any of the commands that it was telling me. It was saying, try a different action, either strike, defense, parry, anything like that. I could not get a single thing to work in this game. I mean, it looks nice though, I guess. And here we have Kingdom Hearts, released by Square in 2002. And as many people know, this was the first like JRPG to actually mix with Disney characters. And a lot of people thought that this was a really stupid concept and there was no way that this would ever work. But obviously after, what seems like 100 games that are all Kingdom Hearts related, they've proven this actually works. It's cool. You get to go around different worlds playing as or playing with different Disney characters and just rocking out classic JRPG. And here's Kingdom Hearts 2, released by Square Enix in 2006. And with this one, they kind of start you off in a different way. Instead of being what felt like, an immediate direct sequel, right, taking off where the first one left off, they actually start you off with a different character. So you end up going back to the original characters later on in the game, but when it started off, it threw a lot of people off and nobody understood really what was going on. And that was because they had released some games in between this one and number one that actually told more of the story and why you start this game this way. Now, here we have Lara Croft Tomb Raider Legend, released by Eidos Interactive in 2006. And this one, it has the same kind of gameplay feel as the original trilogy did, but with an obvious graphics update. I mean, the character models look much more realistic. There's nothing really like jagged or anything like that going on. And the controls are actually really smooth in this game. You don't have a lot of the collision control problems that the original games did, and you just actually get to enjoy playing the game instead of fighting with every wall that gets in your path. Here is Lego Star Wars the video game, released by Eidos Interactive in 2005, and this was really kind of where these Lego games really started to take off. I mean, there was a couple of Lego games on the PS1, and in my opinion, those just were not very good. I mean, they were okay, but this is where they really found their winning formula and how all the other Lego games are really based nowadays. I mean, you go through, you have kind of your hub world, you go through all your different episodes and stuff, you collect studs, you unlock characters, and you just have an awesome time. Now, the last one for this video is Linux, released by Sony in 2002. And I don't have any game cap for this because I didn't want to actually install it onto the hard drive for my PS2. But this is actually the original version of Linux that you could install, and you could run the operating system off of the hard drive on your PS2. Now, this was useful for anyone that wanted more of an open source operating system outside of, where Windows and Mac OS and stuff are really locked down. This allowed people to really get down into the nuts and bolts of using their PS2. The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King was released by EA in 2003, and this game is actually pretty fun. It has kind of a hack and slash feel to it, but in more of, I guess you could say, a more focused way. So as you can see here, I'm playing as Gandalf and going through, and it's kind of teaching me the basics of the game in the very beginning and teaching you how to parry, how to do some light attacks, heavy attacks, things like that. And I mean, the game, it was pretty good. I liked it. The Lord of the Rings: The Third Age was released by EA in 2004, and this one, it kind of takes a different approach than Return of the King and Two Towers, which you'll see next. As you can see in this gameplay footage, it kind of takes more of a classic turn-based strategy, turn-based combat kind of game, as opposed to just an open field battling kind of game. And I thought that was an interesting take that they did on this, because I haven't really played any other Lord of the Rings games that actually have a gameplay mechanic like this. The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers was released by EA in 2002, and as you can see, it's very similar in its gameplay and combat style as Return of the King, but the graphics aren't quite as good as this game was released earlier. But I mean, it has that same kind of fun gameplay to it and the similar mechanics, so it was really consistent. It was just in a different part of the Lord of the Rings story. Now for some more sports games. This is Madden 2002, released by EA Sports in 2000. And this game, I mean, it's your typical Madden football game. The graphics were okay for it. I did have some trouble actually capturing the game footage for it, so all you're getting to see right here is kind of the front and back cover. But, I mean, overall, it's exactly what you would expect from a Madden game. Nothing crazy special about it. Here is Madden 06, released by EA Sports in 2005. And this one, I would say this game, the 06 part, was probably a turning point for these kind of games. The graphics took a huge leap forward, and everything had a lot more realism. And for me, being someone who doesn't really play sports games, I found these a lot easier and more intuitive to play than having to select a ton of different plays and figure out all the intricacies of playing a football game.
Now here is Madden '08, released by EA Sports in 2007, and this one, even though it's a couple years later, I feel like the graphics overall were pretty much the same. The gameplay was the same. Of course, it had, updated players and team stats, things like that. This one, I did notice that there was a bit of a change with things like weather patterns and stuff, so that was cool to add a little bit of realism to the games, but overall, it's just another iteration of the same kind of game. Nothing crazy. Up next is Major League Baseball 2K6, released by 2K Sports in 2006. So, this one, as you can see, the graphics are actually halfway decent. They kind of don't have a lot of detail in their textures. Their textures, to me, are a little bland, a little flat, but the core gameplay mechanics are there. It's fluid, it's pretty easy to figure out how to play the game, and it was actually kind of fun. Up next is Major League Baseball 2K9, released by 2K Sports in 2009. And this one, it definitely added more detail to the players overall. You can kind of tell their uniforms pop a little bit more. There's a little more facial detail. It's nothing like the, Major League Sports games that we have today, but I mean, I thought it was good. I mean, the crowd is awful. As you can see, it looks like little cardboard figures popping up. But overall, I mean, this was a solid, year-over-year improvement to the game. Now for something different, we got Medal of Honor Frontline, released by EA in 2002. And this was kind of around the start of these Medal of Honor games. I mean, there was some before this, but this game really has like a lot of what you can tell is originating core mechanics for these style military games like Call of Duty, other Medal of Honor games, etc. And I mean, I thought it was really fun. The controls were super easy to figure out, having played more modern games like Call of Duty and Battlefield, but it was nice. I mean, it was really straightforward, and the gameplay was actually really fun. Now, here is Medal of Honor Rising Sun, released by EA in 2003. And this one, you can tell there is a massive graphic update. It's so much more detailed. There's a lot more going on. There's more particle physics. And the controls, I mean, I felt they were a little bit clunkier, but the overall gameplay, just as a whole, felt a lot nicer. The game ran smooth even with the updated graphics, and I really enjoyed playing this game. Here we've got Mega Man X7, released by Capcom in 2003, and this one, to me, it kind of had like this cell shaded comic book kind of feel to it. I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. You can kind of see it in the gameplay footage, but it didn't really feel overall like a true Mega Man game. I mean, yes, you got your Power Blaster and you got your basic platforming, like different mechanics and stuff like that, but overall it didn't have the same feel as a Mega Man game I felt really should. Here is Mercenaries 2 World in Flames, released by EA in 2008. And this game, it's kind of like a squad-based military-esque kind of game. As you can see, I'm just playing as one of the characters that it assigned me right here. And you can go through and you can call in your other teammates, and you can just rain down havoc on all of these people. Or if you want to, you can also take more of a sneaky, stealthy approach and try to solve your objectives that way. Now this is Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, released by Konami in 2001, and this game, it's amazing how much of a technological jump this game makes, going from the original Metal Gear Solid to now it's on a new console, it's a new continuing story, and how they were just able to add so much more detail into the game to really enhance the overall gameplay experience. This is, I mean, a phenomenal game. Moving right along, we have Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, released by Konami in 2004. And while I don't really care for the graphics as a whole as much as I did in Metal Gear Solid 2, I will say that the shadowing and shading and textures in this game, I think, got a large improvement. I mean, your main character, he looks just kind of like muddied out and kind of blurry. I don't know if it's just the camera angles that the designers chose, but I mean, the gameplay itself is still good. I wasn't a fan of the graphics in this one. This is Midnight Club Street Racing, released by Rockstar Games in 2000. And this game, it's a little boxy. There isn't a lot of, smooth lines or anything like that. But it really was the start of what became an amazing franchise. Personally, my favorite is Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition, but it's fun to go back and play a game and see where a franchise got its start, see it at its roots. And this game, it's still fun. It just doesn't have a lot of the upgrades and stuff that I became accustomed to in the later games. Here we have Monster Jam, released by Activision in 2007, and this game is exactly what you would expect. It is monster trucks everywhere. You have your big derby arena, that way you can go around smashing stuff, and as you can see here, I chose Gravedigger. This was a super popular monster truck whenever I was a kid. I'm not sure if it still is today, but I remember seeing several times as a kid at the local rodeo grounds. They would always have monster trucks, and Gravedigger was always there. So it's kind of cool to be able to play as Gravedigger in a game. Thought that was kind of fun. Here is Mortal Kombat Deception, released by Midway Games in 2002. And one thing I like about this particular item in my collection is that it is the premium pack. And it's got that kind of holographic cover that shows off all the Sub-Zero coloring. Now, Deception was actually a really fun game, and it was the first that I recall that had truly interactive environments. You have all your glowing edges and stuff like that, and you can send people just flying off the edge, as you can see in the footage, and just down to different levels and stuff like that. And it really added a new dimension to the gameplay, which I really enjoyed. Here is Moto GP 4, released by Namco in 2006. And again, this is one of those games, it's what you see is what you get. I mean, it is a motorcycle game modeled for realism after the actual Moto GP sport. So you have several different bikes, you have a few different tricks and stuff, you can do wheelies and stuff like that, but mostly this is kind of like a just track racing game using various MotoGP riders and motorcycles. Now, the last game for this video is MVP Baseball 2005, released by EA in 2005. And this one, graphically, it's good. Gameplay-wise, it has exactly what you would expect. But the way they do some of the mechanics, I didn't really care for. Like the pitching system, as you can see, that little power bar that's going. I don't know. It just kind of bugged me the way that it was controlled. It wasn't as intuitive as the 2K Sports games. MX World Tour, featuring Jamie Little, was released by Crave Entertainment in 2005. Now, this game, the graphics don't really go for super realism or anything, but that's okay because the game actually plays fairly well. The overall AI physics aren't that great, in my opinion, but the actual riding physics, hitting the jumps, things like that, it actually feels pretty natural and it controls quite well. So I actually had a lot of fun playing this game. Myst 3 Exile was released by Ubisoft in 2002 and is a continuation of the overarching story of the Myst franchise. There was the original Myst game where you're on the island, then they had Riven, which was a sequel to Myst, and then they came out with Myst 3. And these games were famous for their puzzle solving, for all of the FMV that they had, as you can see here in the game capture footage. And they were just all around really fun adventure games. Up next, we have Naruto Ultimate Ninja, released by Namco Bandai Games in 2006. And this is just a classic Japanese anime kind of game. And as you can see here, this particular one is more of a fighting game. But I really enjoyed how you can actually interact with the environments and kind of bounce around. You can run up the walls, you can go to different areas in each of the different fighting arenas, and you can actually have some depth where you can go back and forward inside the play area as well. So it was really fun. Here is Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles 2, released by Namco Bandai Games in 2007. And this one, as opposed to the previous game, is more of a linear 3D adventure kind of game. So instead of just fighting other people from the Naruto franchise, you actually go through on a 3D adventure. Now, it's not very open world or anything like that. Like I mentioned, it's very linear, but it's still a fairly fun game. Here is NASCAR '08, released by EA Sports in 2007. Now, typically, I really don't care for sports games, and I especially don't really care about NASCAR. It's just not my kind of thing. But I will say the physics in this game are really good. I mean, it controls exactly as you would expect a car to control, especially at high speeds. And even though this was just a basic track that I was capturing footage on, it was actually really fun. I found myself like continuously driving to see if I could get better lap times. Here we have NBA 2K2, released by Sega Sports in 2002, and these basketball games are typically regarded as better than the EA games. Sega Sports often they had better graphics, they had better gameplay, the AI was better. And right here I'm just doing a little bit of free throw work, and I mean the control system, it was just more intuitive in these games I found than your traditional EA Sports titles. Speaking of EA, here is NBA Live '06, released by EA Sports in 2005. Now, the overall background graphics, they are better than the Six Sports version, but that one was also 4 years prior to this one. So I would really expect there to be a much greater leap in graphics capability from a developer, especially one as big as EA. But I didn't really see it in this game. Here is NBA Live '07, released by EA Sports in 2006. And this one, it got a little bit more smoothing. As you can see, the shadowing is a little bit better on the players. And the gameplay, it didn't really change much. I really have never been able to quite grasp the overall gameplay of these kinds of sports games. I I much more prefer something along the lines of NBA Jam. You just got a little 2-on-2 going or a little 1-on-1, and it just makes it much more fun than having to deal with the entire team on screen. Now, here is NBA Live '08, released by EA Sports in 2007. And this one, it felt like they were really starting to hit their stride. Graphically, it's really easy on the eyes, and it looks like they were really starting to push the limit of what the PS2 was capable of in terms of a sports game like this. Now, I am not like a huge basketball fan by any means, but this one I actually had more fun with. It's just too bad that this one was several years later compared to the Sega Sports one that I actually had a lot more fun with. Now, here is NBA Street Volume 2, released by EA Sports Big in 2003. And this one I actually had a lot more fun with than the traditional NBA style games. It was more of like pickup games, backyard ball, that kind of stuff. And it was just more fun. You didn't have to follow a super strict set of rules or guidelines that you would have with a typical NBA or any other kind of sports game. And it was more of just go out, have fun, play the game. Here is NCAA Football '09, released by EA in 2008, and I believe this is the only college game that I have for PlayStation. I don't believe I have any of the other college sports games. And this one, I mean, the graphics are a little wiry looking, but overall, I mean, it's really not bad. I would have expected much less from something like this where it's not an actual mainline NFL kind of game. But I mean, it was easy and intuitive, and it played very well. Here is Need for Speed Underground 2, released by EA in 2004. And this one, I gotta say, this is probably one of my more favorite Need for Speed games. But unfortunately, my PS2 was having some issues and just couldn't capture the footage off of this game. I'm not sure why. But it is a really fun game. It's got solid graphics, excellent driving physics, and just overall, it's a lot of fun to play. Now, here is NFL Street 3, released by EA Sports in 2006. And this is another one of those kind of more backyard ball kind of games. As you can see, I'm not playing on a traditional field or anything. It looks like we're in some sort of hangar. The proportions of characters are a little bit off. You know, they're a little top heavy with the muscles and stuff like that. But it just took what, to me, in my opinion, is kind of a boring game, football, and it made it more fun by adding a comical aspect to it. So I appreciated that, and I mean, the game was actually pretty fun. Now, here's the last sports game in my PS2 collection. That is NHL 2002, released by EA Sports in 2001. And this is another one where, for whatever reason, the game capture, I just could not get it to work right. But it plays just like any hockey game you would expect. I mean, I haven't played a ton of them other than, maybe some NES hockey. And I mean, it was fun. The physics felt right on the ice, and that's pretty much all I can really say about it. Now, here we have Over the Hedge, released by Activision in 2006, and this game is based on the movie Over the Hedge. Pretty funny movie. I mean, not anything to write home about, but I mean, I was entertained by it. I probably won't watch it again, but the game is actually pretty fun. It's kind of like a little adventure game, and as you can see, you have some puzzles and obstacles that you have to solve. Typical movie franchise, kid franchise kind of game that came out around this era, and I mean, it's fun. I mean, that's pretty much it. Now, here we have one of my favorite games on the PS2, and that is Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, released by Ubisoft in 2003. And this game, it's just amazing how innovative it was. I mean, I can't think of any other games that truly used a time mechanic the way this one did to just rewind time and continuously be able to replay certain aspects of the game over and over until you got it right. And what was kind of cool about this franchise is it's basically what led to the existence of the Assassin's Creed franchise. Here we have Prince of Persia: Warrior Within, released by Ubisoft in 2004. And this one felt a lot darker to me. As you can see in this opening scene, he's being chased by some sort of dark force or like a darkness or an evil. And this game, it really touches on, kind of fighting with your inner demons. And I mean, the overall gameplay mechanics are pretty solid, but the story was just such a weird segue from other types of Prince of Persia games to me. Here is Ratchet Deadlocked, released by Sony in 2005. And this game, it has your typical what you would expect kind of Ratchet and Clank gameplay, except you are just playing as Ratchet. And it's pretty fun. I mean, it has typical 3D action platformer. The whole tutorial in the beginning, I felt, should have been something that could be like optional, but it really forces you through this tutorial and really wants you to know how it wants you to use the analog sticks. And I actually found it more annoying than anything. Once it finally let me out, then I started having fun with the game. The last game for this video is Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc, released by Ubisoft in 2003. And it is just astonishing like how far Rayman has gone from the original PlayStation up to this game right here. I mean, graphically, as you can see, it is immensely more colorful. There are obviously darker sections, but the parts that are lit well are actually really bright and vibrant. The mechanics control extremely well, and I really like the 3D aspect to the game. Red Faction was released by THQ in 2001 and is a fun FPS adventure kind of style game. And what was really nice about this game is just the overall weapon selection, the way the AI worked. It was just really intuitive and it made the game really fun. And it had kind of a Ghosts of Mars kind of feel to it. So I really enjoyed playing this game. It's just a shame that some of the later games in the franchise just could not hold up to the standard that this game set. Resident Evil Code Veronica X was released by Capcom in 2001, and honestly, I didn't really care for this Resident Evil game all that much. I mean, it had the typical stuff that you would expect out of a RE game, but it didn't really have the same kind of thrill or appeal that the main entry games had for me. I mean, it had a few different like quirky things that were kind of fun, but overall I didn't really care for this game that much. Rumble Racing was released by EA in 2001, and I gotta say, I actually enjoyed this racing game. I mean, it was a little more cartoony and less realistic than other racing games that EA's released, but I did have a lot of fun, and it didn't really have a drifting mechanic per se, but it was really easy to control and really get into those different skids to help you navigate different corners and tight curves and stuff like that. Scalar was released by Global Star Software in 2004, and as you can tell from the cover, it kind of looks like it would be a Spyro ripoff, but the game controls a lot differently in my opinion. I mean, it has the same kind of action mechanics that any 3D platformer would have, except this one, as you can see, it adds this cool grinding mechanic. So I thought that was kind of fun. That's kind of your quick way to get around, is to grind through the levels, and then you actually have like these big claws and stuff that you can use as attacks and defense. And I mean, overall, the game was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Here we have Shrek the Third, released by Activision in 2007, and while this has the same name as the movie, it's not really a scene-for-scene adaptation of it. I mean, I do appreciate that this game has a much more heightened kind of graphical presence than previous Shrek games, but this one, I mean, the combat, it's a little bit dry. You do have a couple of different techniques, but it's nothing crazy. And this one, instead of kind of, playing through the movie, it kind of adds its own twist on it, and I didn't really personally care for that. Silent Scope 3 was released by Konami in 2002, and this game operates pretty much exactly like all of the other Silent Scope games. You get your mission, you go out, and you just start sniping people. I will say that I really liked the indicator system in version 3, or in Silent Scope 3, compared to other games. It was a lot more intuitive to use and made it really easy to find your next target. I also liked the aiming reticle a lot more. The Simpsons Road Rage was released by EA in 2001, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed playing through this game. I mean, it's awesome because it's like Crazy Taxi meets cel-shaded Simpsons in a nice big 3D world. You drive around as Homer, and you're picking up different fares and stuff like that, and you have different speed challenges, and there is actually a story and some story elements to the game. But overall, it's fun to just kind of drive around the world of The Simpsons and take different characters around and just kind of get there as quick as you can. The Sims was released by EA in 2000, and unfortunately with this game and the next one, I was unable to capture the footage because my PS2 was having a lot of trouble playing these games consistently. But for anyone that has ever heard of The Sims, this is the game that started it all. This is where people first learned in that 3D world how to develop their characters, build relationships, build homes, businesses, all kinds of stuff. And it was, I gotta say, a highly addicting game when this first came out. Now here we have The Sims Bustin' Out, released by Maxis in 2003. And this one, it kind of just added a lot more of expansion capabilities to the game. It wasn't like a direct expansion for The Sims on the PS2, but it definitely had that kind of feel to it. So it added new things to do, it added new character models, new ways to interact with the game, and it just added another dimension to it. So that was kind of fun. Up next, we have Snoopy vs. the Red Baron, released by Namco Bandai Games in 2006. And this game, what it reminds me of is playing something like Crimson Skies, but with Snoopy and a more comical feel to the animation style. But I gotta say, this game, it controls explicitly well, and it's actually a lot of fun to play. I thought it would be kind of gimmicky because it was a Snoopy game, but I actually really enjoyed playing this and found myself playing it for a lot longer than I originally intended to. Here is SOCOM, U.S. Navy SEALs, released by SCEI in 2002. And before Call of Duty became a household name, it was definitely SOCOM that took that. And I mean, it was such an iconic game when it came out, and it was so much fun to play. And it also added the capability of being able to play online through the Ethernet adapter that you could get on the PS2, and that just added such a huge dimension and allowed for online gameplay. Here we have SOCOM Combined Assault, released by SCEI in 2006, and this is a far greater upgrade when it comes to the way the game plays, when it comes to the overall lighting and effects in the game, to the character models, to the gameplay itself with how well the AI does playing the game. And I mean, this game, it was another SOCOM hit, and I really enjoyed playing it. Now here is SOCOM 3, released by SCEI in 2005, And this one, it had solid graphics, solid gameplay, and it put you in kind of a different part of the world. The original SOCOM, it was kind of dark, very military factory style. SOCOM 2 was a lot more jungle oriented. And as you can see, this one is a lot more desert oriented. So it's fun to get those new environments whenever you're playing these military games. Here is Sonic Heroes, released by Sega in 2004. Now, this game, it took a pretty interesting approach because you had several teams of characters that you would play as. As you can see right here, I'm playing as Team Sonic, so that gives you Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails. And each one has a different ability, and you have to constantly switch between those abilities depending on what obstacle lies in front of you within that particular level. And each team has different abilities that they are either good with or weak against, and it's just up to you to figure out which one to use. Here is Spider-Man 2, released by Activision in 2004, and I gotta say, this is probably one of my all-time favorite PS2 games. And if you happen to tune in while I was live streaming Marvel Spider-Man on PS4, you would know that I referenced this game a lot because they took basically everything that was amazing about this game, put it into that one, and just built it out even more. And I mean, one of the mainstays that made this game so amazing was the web slinging. And I mean, you'll hear me talk a little bit more about this in my Spider-Man review that comes out this Friday. But I mean, this game, I loved it. Here is Spider-Man Web of Shadows, released by Treyarch in 2008. And while, I mean, I do like Spider-Man games, this one I didn't really care for all that much. I mean, overall, it was an okay game, and the animation style was kind of a fun twist on playing Spider-Man 2, which went for a lot more realism. But I didn't really care for this game that much. I mean, it was just okay in my opinion. Here is an awesome snowboarding game, and that is SSX, released by EA in 2000. And this game started what became just an amazing franchise. And this one, it had a little bit more realism to it. Obviously, it was kind of fantastical with some of the things that happened in the game and some ways that it controlled. But overall, it was just a really fun snowboarding game. And while I like Amped and stuff like that on Xbox, I liked this one because it wasn't taking it too serious. It was something you can just hit the slopes and have fun. Here is SSX 3, released by EA in 2003, and this was just an amazing entry in the franchise. I mean, I would say that Tricky is probably my favorite, but this one, they added so much more depth to the environments and to what you could see off into the distance. They didn't really have that kind of game fog that a lot of games displaying massive distance had, and it was just fun. The controls felt a little sticky at times to me personally, but overall, I really had fun playing the game and love going back to it. Now, the last game for this video is Starsky and Hutch, released by Empire Interactive in 2003. And as you can tell from this kind of opening cutscene here, it is a very cartoony looking game. And it doesn't build on the remake of Starsky and Hutch. This is more of the original Starsky and Hutch. And I mean, it's fun, but the controls are pretty awkward. And I mean, overall, it seemed more gimmicky than video game. Up first, we have Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, released by LucasArts in 2005. And this game, it follows the events of the movie, but it's actually pretty fun. I mean, personally, I didn't really care for this movie all that much. I'm more of an original trilogy, not a prequel trilogy fan. But the gameplay, it was very fluid. I really enjoyed being able to use a lightsaber, some of the force powers right in the beginning of the game. And I mean, overall, I thought it was fun gameplay. I really enjoyed it. Up next, we have Star Wars Racer Revenge, released by LucasArts in 2002, and this one is a follow-up to the original Pod Racer game that was on the N64. Now, this one, I really do enjoy the gameplay in it. I kind of like how it added the health bars and stuff like that to all of the other racers, and I like how it kind of has an updated UI for it. It's a little simplistic, but it gets the job done, and it tells you where the enemies are in relation to you. Now, in this version, you also got a major graphics update, but I gotta be honest, I really thought that the gameplay overall would have a little more depth to it this time around. Up next is Super Bust-A-Move 2, released by Acclaim in 2001, and this game is just like any other kind of Bust-A-Move game. Typical puzzle shooter-esque kind of game. You know, you match up the different colored orbs with what's on the screen, try and knock the various things down, and just go from there. You know, you beat the puzzle, you win the level, and then you keep moving on. Here is Time Crisis 3, released by Namco in 2003, and this game is your typical Time Crisis kind of shooter game. You know, you get your reload when you shoot off screen, you have all the different enemies that you have to shoot that pop up, you get different power-ups coming up, and it's exactly what you would expect it to be. I mean, it is fun. I have always enjoyed these kind of like arcade shooter kind of style games. But yeah, I mean, not really anything new here other than maybe some updated graphics. Here we have Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Double Agent, released by Ubisoft in 2006. And this one definitely got a big graphics update compared to the regular Splinter Cell game. Now, the controls, they felt a little clunky to me, though. I mean, in the original game, it was all about, you know, that stealth and all that stuff, and this game still has that kind of aspect to it, but the controls just didn't feel as intuitive as they did in the previous game. And I don't know, I just didn't care for that much. Here is Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam, released by Activision in 2007. Now, with this game, they kind of broke the original mold that they have, and they got rid of that whole free skating aspect. I mean, you can still do tricks and various things like that that, you know, people had come to expect from a Tony Hawk game, but the entire premise of this game was all about hitting that downhill as fast as you can, just like the title says. And I gotta say, I mean, it's pretty fun. It adds a different kind of gameplay to what was starting to become, you know, a more senior franchise. This one is Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, released by Activision in 2007, and this was another one that kind of stepped away from the norm for the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, and this one made it to where you were kind of more of a up-and-coming skater, and you had to go around. I don't know, the best way to describe it is maybe like GTA style. You know, you go around this area, you're finding missions, things like that, and you're trying to become a better skater, get noticed, and just kind of unlock this new area that you're in. The game was also a little more like dark and gritty compared to the Pro Skater games that are a little more like poppy and colorful. Back to another classic. This is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, released by Activision in 2001, and this one obviously came out several years before Proving Ground or Downhill Jam, and this was a continuation of the Pro Skater series. And they made lots of graphical updates. They did a ton more with level design and interactive elements. They improved the overall UI and added a ton more tricks, new skaters. They just expanded this whole Pro Skater universe immensely. And I mean, it really shows. The game is awesome. It plays super smooth, and I had a lot of fun getting the footage for it. Now here is Twisted Metal Black, released by Sony in 2001, and this is by far my favorite Twisted Metal game, as well as probably one of my top 3 favorite PS2 games. This is one I remember playing with my cousin a ton whenever we were kids, and I mean, I just loved everything about this game. It was dark and gritty. They added a way crazier storyline to it and really went in depth with every single character. The gameplay is so much more polished, in my opinion, than the other games, and everything is just smoother. It's easier to see what's happening, and I mean, God, I just love this game. Here we have Virtua Fighter 4, released by Sega in 2002, and this is your typical everyday fighting game. I mean, there isn't really much crazy stuff going on in typical Virtua Fighter fashion. It was kind of 3D environments. You could move around in three-dimensional space, but it wasn't so much that you could really interact with a lot of what was going on like later Virtua Fighter games. But I mean, you know, typical fighting game, you know, you just go against the other opponent, do some moves, and whoever's better wins. Here is Warhammer 40k Fire Warrior, released by THQ in 2003, and This one was actually more of a first person shooter strategy kind of game compared to some of the other Warhammer games that were more of like, I don't want to say RTS, but more of like a grid based kind of thing, like an XCOM game. And this one, I mean, it plays just like a typical first person shooter, has kind of a Halo vibe to it. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. Nothing really crazy jumping out at me, but it was a fun game to play. Now here we have Warriors of Might and Magic, released by 3DO in 2001. And with this game, they kind of went for that more open world 3D kind of game. And I mean, I don't really think they did a very good job doing it. The gameplay is pretty clunky. As you can see, the character models are very polygonal and have a lot of jagged corners and not very smoothed out. And I mean, overall, the gameplay, it was just kind of mediocre at best, honestly. Up next is Wave Rally, released by Eidos Interactive in 2001, and unfortunately I was not able to capture footage for this one because the game kept kind of glitching out on me, but as you can tell from the cover art here, this is totally a Wave Race style game. I mean, it's basically a ripoff of Wave Race. I mean, the overall gameplay, it plays pretty smooth. I thought it was a little easier to control than, say, Wave Race Blue Storm. But overall, I mean, it's your typical racing jet ski game, and that's really all there is to it. Up next is Wild Wild Racing, released by Interplay in 2000. And this one, I gotta say, actually, it controlled really well. I was kind of surprised. It seemed like from the cover art and everything that it was more of a budget kind of style, but I had a lot of fun. And being able to play kind of a rally game and really hit the dirt, and I mean, just explore these tracks, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And I was able to go through and really kind of hit tight corners, and the overall controls and mechanics for the game, they just ran super smooth, which was really nice in this kind of racing game. Up next, we have WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, released by THQ in 2006. And as you can see, I mean, these kind of games, this is when they really started getting a major graphics overhaul. You can see they really tried to make the models look like the characters that they are actually portraying, instead of having some generic kind of bitmaps going on. Now, I am absolutely horrible at wrestling games like this. I just can't figure out how to get the moves to work properly. So, I mean, overall gameplay for me, it was just kind of eh. Next on the list is WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, released by THQ in 2007. And again, it's another graphics update. And again, I was just getting my butt handed to me because I have no idea how to properly play these games. I know a lot of people that really love wrestling games, but I've just never been super into wrestling, and I have no idea what these moves are called or anything like that. All I know is that in this, John Cena kept totally kicking my butt, as you can see from this footage. Now here we have X2 Wolverine's Revenge, released by Activision in 2003, and this one, instead of being like a traditional story kind of game for an X-Men game, it was actually more of like I don't know, it was still story based, but it was more of like a fighting game to me. I mean, as you can see, like, you know, you get some attack bonuses and you get to do some weird, crazy different things, but it was also kind of loosely based on the movie from what I could tell. But I mean, overall, it was kind of fun to go around and just smash a bunch of people as Wolverine. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? Now, for the last game in my PS2 collection, we have X Squad, released by Activision in 2006, and this game is a total squad-based game, as you can tell from the name of it, and I gotta say, it was actually really fun. I mean, the graphics are a little bit cheesy, and the writing dialogue it's just awful, but gameplay as a whole was actually really fun, and the controls for the game were super intuitive. So, I mean, if you can get past kind of cheesy graphics and dialogue, it's actually a really fun game.
And there you have it, everyone. That is every game that I had in my PS2 collection at the time of me filming that series. Now, if you guys liked today's video, please let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, please be sure to also hit those like and subscribe buttons, as well as that little notification bell so you get an alert every time I get a new video coming out. Now, as always, I'm GameDad. I thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you later.